Good evening and welcome to another edition of The Book Show. It's my very great pleasure to introduce my co-host, John Reynolds. John, how are you?
Always good to be here.
All right.
And you're looking in the pink, Neville.
Yes, well, I forget that it's pink. I tell people I just woke up one morning and it was like this. But it's not true. It's
not
just
true.
the tail end of fundraising for breast cancer.
Very, very...
Yes, indeed. The
commendable.
hairdresser said it'll wash out tomorrow.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was 3 weeks ago.
Never listen to your hairdresser.
Yeah.
I don't worry about my hairdresser, but there you go.
Well, great show tonight. We'll come to the World Book News in a moment, and then excited to have Tony Moores from Poppies on tonight as well as our guest.
Poppies, excellent bookshop.
All right.
Yep, nice friendly atmosphere, so I'll be interested to hear what he's got to say about that.
Yes, indeed. And then we'll be back again to talk about the Book of the Week. World Book News.
Lots of things happening in the world of books. Of course, New Zealand, Eleanor Catton has won the Booker Prize.
Yes.
That's pretty good, isn't it? And who would have thought a book set in Hokitika in the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, isn't it? I think?
Yes.
Around about then. Yeah, I was just amazed. I've yet to read it. I certainly
Yeah,
intend
I'd have to say
and
as
we'll
well.
we'll have it on the book show.
Indeed.
But it just goes to show you can take any region, any time, any place, and if you can weave a good story and have lots of contrasting characters, then there you are.
And you might say a great slice of talent as
Indeed,
well. Yeah.
indeed. Excellent writer. Speaking of a great slice of talent, I know you're a great Jane Austen fan, Neville, but now we have Sense and Sensibility by some trollop called Joanna, who's had the cheek to write a modern version of Sense and Sensibility, which has been quite well reviewed. What do you think?
Well, I think there's only one Jane Austen. So I'll go with David Cameron. I don't know if you remember the furore about the first woman on the British £5 note.
Oh,
and,
yes, yes.
And a man was replaced by Jane Austen, and he said the government approached it with sense and sensibility.
Yeah, that's right, without pride nor prejudice.
Yes, without pride nor prejudice.
Yeah, okay. So one of the reviewers, I think this was in the Sunday Star Times, said reworkings are always polarising, seen either as heresy or homage.
Yes.
So,
well, we have people rewriting James Bond and other characters
yes, that's
where
true.
authors are deceased.
Yes,
Yeah.
so there we go. Another interesting book that's just come out by Kerry-Ann Walsh, who's often the Australian correspondent on the national radio, and of course she's a highly respected political journalist in Australia. Her book is called The Stalking of Julia Gillard, and how the media followed Julia Gillard and analysed every aspect of her life and put her under tremendous pressure until she finally caved in.
And the title gives it that sort of uncomfortable flavour.
It does.
Well. Yeah.
It does. And Walsh is very scathing of her fellow members of the Fourth Estate. Quote from the book, "The press gallery can be a beast that feeds on itself. Apart from attending the occasional press conferences, question time or ministerial interview, gallery journalists are shackled to their desks. Their company is each other. Their sounding boards are each other. Their judgments about the political angle of the day are formed out of exchanges with each other. But the competition is fierce for a headline story, to be the agenda-setting pundit or to be the first online to repeat a whisper." And the book goes along in that style. She has a very jaundiced view. So that's The Stalking of Julia Gillard, which has just come out. Another interesting book that's just been published is called The Wartime Journals of HUGH TREVOR-ROPER. Now, he was a very famous historian.
Indeed.
His most famous book was The Last Days of Hitler, which came out during the furore when people thought Hitler had escaped and he was living in South America, or he was a refugee somewhere. And so TREVOR-ROPER was charged with the task of finding him. He had an interesting story. He married into the upper classes, and his parents were quite well off. I've read a little bit about his background. His education, someone writing said that he was put through the conventional sequence of grim prep schools, chilblains, ignorance, and the cane. Sounds like Takapuna grammar that I had to.
Well, Christchurch Boys High School.
Oh,
yes,
there you go.
Yeah.
There you
So,
go. Yeah.
Without the chilblains.
Without the chilblains, indeed. And he's very acerbic about British society. And just to read you a wee bit, he talks about the The History of the English Ruling Classes is one of his books. The silent, patient, nibbling, rat-faced country landlords and the lawyers of early Tudor days, and ending with the faded aristocracy of the modern age, merely a bare recital of their great houses now put to public uses or pulled down or peeling, tenantless, those mausoleums, those cenotaphs of a vanished race. Wonderful writing.
Very cynical writing.
Yeah, very cynical writing. So that's the Wartime Diaries. And then we've got Alan Duff, who's just published a book called Frederick's Coat. Alan Duff, of course, who's done very well with his writing. I haven't read it. One of the reviewers said it takes a while to get into it, but once you get going, it's a good book. So there we are. We'll hopefully get that on the show at some stage. Frederick's Coat, published by Vintage, and it was reviewed reasonably published by Random House. Published by Random House. It's had reasonably favourable reviews. Danny befriends a homeless man in the park, vodka swilling, poetry spouting, Frederick. There we go.
Well, we know him as a man who can tell a good story.
Oh, he tells a very good story, yes. Yeah, and he is not afraid to just hack into New Zealand society and find the seamy side and also the positive side. Yeah. I also talked to Jenny Howarth yesterday. I had a cup of tea with her. Jenny's a publisher from Christchurch, and she's written a number of books, and we hope to have her on the show later on, talking to a well-known publisher. She took over Hazard Press and turned it into Wiley Publishers, and she's given me a couple of books that we'll look at in the next couple of weeks. And also next week we're looking at World Book News. We'll have a look at Margaret Thatcher's new biography, which is a similar acerbic style about Mrs. Thatcher.
Well, indeed. Well, love her or hate her.
Absolutely, she's there. You cannot ignore her. So that's World Book News.
All right, excellent, John. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're most welcome.
And thank you, folks. We'll be back right after the break, and I'm delighted to tell you we'll be talking to our special guest, Tony Moores from Poppies.
If the book you are reading late at night is not helping you sleep, maybe it's time for Sleep by Remy Fairman. This natural product helps you to have a normal and healthy sleep. It calms a racing mind and helps with anxiety. Suitable for men and women. Wake up refreshed and able to remember the story. Available from leading pharmacies and health stores.
Hello there, and welcome back to the book show. It's a great pleasure tonight to have as our special guest Tony Moores from Poppies Books. We've had plenty of arguments in here about are books on the way out, is Kindle and other electronic reading machines on the way in. We'll have a talk to him about that, but first of all, let's say hello. Tony, welcome.
Much appreciated. Oh gosh, I started in the book trade long before most people remember. 1977 in Wellington, in a company called London Bookshops that no longer exists anymore. But
I remember the name though.
Yeah, fantastic group of a privately owned chain, got up to 35 or 36 stores at one stage, and I was a store manager down there for many years in a number of different stores. I grew up with books. I think it was my mother's mother had a wardrobe full of books, and I spent a lot of my childhood staying with her as my parents moved around.
Hiding in the wardrobe, reading books?
No, pulling books out of the wardrobe and reading things like H. Rider Haggard and Desmond Bagley and people like that are just nobody reads anymore, which is very sad. So, but it was great, and a love of words, a love of language, and a love of ideas, and what you get reading books is insights into other people's worlds, fiction, non-fiction.
There's a big difference between reading, enjoying reading, taking a great deal out of reading, and wanting to bring books to other people.
I can't think of anything better. It's really exciting to be able to create a situation and an environment where people can have a selection of books that they can come in and browse, and you can talk to them about them, you can recommend things, you can listen to what they've been reading and what they might be interested in. And if you give them a recommendation and they come back and thank you, there's nothing more rewarding. It's brilliant.
So that's part of the philosophy behind Poppies?
Very much so, very much so. And we have an environment where the stores are furnished with home furnishings as opposed to commercial shelving, where there is space to browse, there is an unhurried sense of timelessness that you can sort of wander around, and if you don't want to be bothered, you can just cruise, and you know that you're recognised, and if you want some help, we're there to give it.
So it's very clear when you come in that you're encouraged to pick up a book and just have a bit of a look.
Absolutely. It's like going into somebody's living room and seeing and picking a book up off the shelf or off their coffee table, or and the books are generally not arranged in what you would call categories. They're sort of sprinkled. It's organised chaos, I like to call it. And
sounds
in amongst,
like my library.
Well, it's like my library at home. I mean, you know, we have bookshelves everywhere, but nothing's very well organised. The books are just poked in where they fit, and it's not quite as chaotic as that. But that's the sense that we try and give, that it's a browser's paradise. They may have something in mind when they arrive, but they discover things they never expected to find, and there's a close relationship because the stores are small. They usually have one person staffing them at a time, and so one or two at the most, and so the opportunity to have a conversation is very real.
The overall picture of Poppies?
Well, I would love there to be more. There are currently 8 Poppy stores sprinkled around the North Island, and my ambition as the brand owner is to provide opportunities for more book lovers to actually have their own store.
Right.
And this is what the businesses are geared to do. They are owner-operator businesses where the person who is investing in the business has a passion for books, wants to share that with people, and this is a business which enables them to do that without any head office looking over their shoulder and telling them what to do.
But at the same time providing some sort of guidelines and a shape. And
very much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my skill set, I guess, is to provide people with that knowledge of how to go about things. There are business systems in place, but in terms of selecting product, it can be quite serendipitous, or you can sit down and have a good discussion about how to sort of pitch things for various markets, and that's very much. There are no two Poppy stores alike.
That reflects the owners?
Very
or
much.
The franchise holders?
Very much. The franchise owners, who are the people who work in the business, and they put their own flavour on it. If they're passionate about a particular topic area, then and they see that there's a market for it in their region, then that's what they can focus on and provide a point of difference.
So if there's somebody out there right at this moment saying, I'd love to be involved in in a bookstore, running my own, they should get in touch with you.
Tony at poppiesbooks.co.nz.
All
I will
right.
respond 24/7.
Excellent. Okay. So one of the other things that occurs to me at the moment, and you spoke earlier about corporatisation, and one of the things that I notice, and I don't like really, is that bookshops are becoming stationery shops. And so almost as though the novel or the exploration in terms of books is secondary to selling you pens and paper and maybe cards and what have you. And I just wonder how you feel about that.
I guess one of the challenges for the book industry is that the trading relationship that exists between bookstores and publishers has not really changed in over 30 years. The margins that bookshops operate is very challenging in today's environment where costs are so high. And so a lot of these big corporate stores have been forced into selling other merchandise where the profit margins are higher than books. I mean, books provide a comfortable living, but they're not a get-rich scheme. And I'm honest with people coming in and making inquiries about a business that you can enjoy what you're doing in a lovely environment with wonderful product, but the opportunities to get rich belong to the landlords and the banks.
And so it's part lifestyle, part love of books.
Oh, absolutely.
Wanting to have that interaction with the people who also love books.
If you can't talk to people about books when they come into your shop at the level at which they're going to be interested, then you shouldn't be in the business.
Right.
But it's not hard. If you are a reader, it doesn't matter what you read. You can read fiction, non-fiction, thrillers, science fiction, whatever. But you can convey that excitement and passion about what you've been reading, then that's transferable. And in a market where there are over 100,000 new books published every year in English alone, and there are some 5 million books in print, most customers are looking for a recommendation. They want to know what they should be reading that's going to be worth their time. And if you can help them with that, then that's a service that they're grateful for, and they come back.
So a couple of thoughts occur to me. If I was to come in this week, what would you be recommending if I was looking for a novel? If I was starting to say, okay, I need to accumulate a few books for the Christmas holidays?
Well, like many people, I've just finished reading The Luminaries, which was fantastic. It's not the best book I've ever read, but it's a great yarn. It's a Victorian thriller, a Victorian mystery. It's incredibly well written, and it just puts you right on the spot. I adored it. I loved it. Apart from that, I read a mix of things, fiction and non-fiction, and I've just recently read the new Bill Bryson, which we're going to be talking about in a minute. And I've just started the new Donna Tartt, which is another... I'm ambitious now. I've got another 800-page book that I'm going to tackle. But...
they'll balance the coffee table.
They'll balance the coffee table. I mean, the bedside table is it's got several books on it at any given time, and I tend to read whatever takes my mood. Some things, like The Luminaries, you do need to read as a dedicated read without sort of interruption. Not because it's difficult, but because it's big and long, and you've got to remember stuff.
Eleanor Catton, on the way to the Man Booker, described as being... having some of the attributes of Charles Dickens.
I think I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, the book is written in the language of the era.
Yeah.
You very quickly hook into that.
Right.
It's an easy read in that regard. But what she does is she dissects the community, which is Hokitika in the 1850s.
Yep.
She dissects Gold Rush era, and she dissects the community like Dickens used to look at the various parts of the community. There's the newspaper man, there is the property developer, there's the gold diggers, there are the Chinese community who are the labourers, there are the bar owners, and each of these people contribute something else to the story in a way that Dickens used to assemble, and you had a complete picture of what the society was like.
And you said not the best book you've ever read. So a cheeky question: what would be in the if you had to say suddenly the top 5 for you?
I say my top book ever is Ken Follett, Pillars of the Earth.
Yes.
Which is just one of those books that's just stayed with me for 30 years.
Yes.
It's a great story set in medieval England around a community of cathedral builders, and you just get this sense of what there were no support mechanisms for the labourers and the ordinary people. When stuff went wrong, you were basically, that was it. You know, stuff went wrong. You either had to survive on your own wits, or there was nobody there to back it up. And there were the people with money and the landowners who were in charge of everything, and you were simply stock.
Right.
And it just amazing story of what society and people had to endure, and it just brings you back to how easy we have things these days. There is just no comparison.
It also occurs to me, you pick it up, and it's a wonderful book, and you pick it up and smell it, and you say, wow, I'm now 2/3 of the way through this. And it occurs to me, that's not the experience that you have with something like Kindle. So are we going to survive? Are we going to survive the attack of the killer Kindle?
I don't think it's a killer at all. I think it's now part of the mix, and there are occasions when, many occasions, when reading a book on a Kindle is going to be more convenient than carting a book around. Mainly travel, for lightness of transport, but it's just a different medium. In defence of the book, I mean, there is nothing better, as you said, than the smell and feel and heft of a book, and you can physically tell how far through you are just by sensing it. But many of us spend our entire workaday staring at a screen, and I don't believe that we want to spend our evenings reading staring at a screen. And the focus that I have is that there are some books which I would call commodities. They're good reads, they do their job, and you read them once and you dispose of them. You don't want to keep them, but there are other books which are keepers.
Yes.
And you want to be able to see it on your shelf, and you want to be able to pick it up and share it with somebody, and you want to be able to flick to a passage that you remember in particular and show it to somebody to encourage them to pick it up. And you can't do that with a Kindle. It's clever, smart technology, and it will give a lot of people access to books who may not have otherwise entered a bookshop.
Right.
However, the two are going to coexist, and the challenge for booksellers is to make sure that what they're doing and offering their customers is relevant and of interest to their customers, and that the support and service that they give it is what customers require.
And so that brings us back to the really personal experience at Poppies.
I mean, the people who own the businesses are book lovers. They read widely, they have their own tastes, and they pick up a lot on what their customers read. So you're talking, I'm having a conversation with you, I know what you're reading, I'm thinking, oh, that's ticking a thought about something else that I might be able to recommend to you.
Yes, and so that all promotes that feeling that I'm going back to my bookshop.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a very big part of it.
All right.
So I mean, there are challenges, but I don't hold any fears for the future of books. I think the business models that are currently used by the big chains are under pressure because of the cost structures that they have. I think the smaller neighbourhood, dare I say, Poppies style of bookshop is an opportunity which has been poorly served in the past. And the good, well-known independent bookshops around the country are doing a fantastic job and are prospering, the brand names.
I've noticed occasionally around the place as well, just thinking about that intimate feel, bookstores that offer the opportunity to sit and have a cup of coffee as well. And I just wonder how you feel about that.
Great idea,
yeah.
Great idea. I mean, it's not a new idea, it has been done, and it tends to work, it tends to require a reasonable store size and footprint to make it work. And there's a natural synergy there. However, it's a different type of business. And my solution to that is, because the Poppies stores are physically small, is to associate them with a neighbouring coffee shop so that there is that opportunity, and to work with the coffee shop rather than bring the coffee shop into the shop, simply because they're not big enough.
Yeah.
So
they can get the cup of coffee and come and use your sofa.
Absolutely, come and use the sofa. Yes, absolutely. Sit under the desk lamp and on the sofa and browse a book with a cup of coffee. Nothing better.
Lovely. I'll be in to see you.
Great.
And
thank
so
you.
now we could talk forever, but we've got to get to this point where you give us a 1-minute spiel about these couple of books that you've got, which you're going to do something with for our viewers.
Indeed, I'm going to give them away because I'm really keen to encourage people to read some of these fantastic books. The first one I'm going to give away is this new book out by Simon Sebag Montefiore called One Night in Winter, set in Russia in the 1950s, so in the era of the Cold War, in the last days of Stalin. And it's a fantastic read. So happy to give that away. And the second one I want to give away is the brand new Bill Bryson, which is a wonderful hardback. I've read both of these books recently and I loved both of them, both fiction, non-fiction. And this is 1927, One Summer, and basically looking at everything that surrounded Lindbergh's flight across the Atlantic and all the things that were happening in America at the time. So what I'd like to do is to ask people to email me, Tony at Poppies Books, Poppies Books, oneword.co.nz, and in the subject line put Poppies on the Book Show. And I'll do a lucky draw, judge's decision final, and would love to give these away.
Tony, that's enormously generous of you, and thank you so much.
Not at all.
And it's also been a great pleasure getting some insight into it, so into your world.
Oh, I'm very pleased to be here.
Yes. Tony Moores.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you.
And thank you, folks. We'll be back right after this break with the Book of the Week.
If the book you are reading late at night is not helping you sleep, maybe it's time for Sleep by Remy Fairman. This natural product helps you to have a normal and healthy sleep. It calms a racing mind and helps with anxiety. Suitable for men and women. Wake up refreshed and able to remember the story. Available from leading pharmacies and health stores.
Welcome back to the book show. And Tony Moores, wasn't he great?
He was most interesting. And he's exactly like I imagined he would be, because his books have that friendly atmosphere. Let's have a chat to you about your books, rather than I'm trying to sell you stuff.
Yeah. The book lover's bookseller. Yes. Have a chat, have a sit, have a think, have a bit of a browse.
And a couple of good books for giveaways.
Yeah,
I'm sorry we're part of the show, otherwise I'd be writing in and seeing if I can get
aren't
one.
you writing in?
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
you're writing in. Oh, okay. Heavily disguised.
Heavily disguised,
okay, yeah. So, books of the week. I decided to do two this week because one of them is quite small, called A Book is a Book, which I thought was very appropriate for the book show. This is a really good little book by Jenny Bernholt, illustrated by Sarah Wilkins. It's the sort of book you could read to children, or children could read to themselves. The inside jacket says, books can be true and not true, and sometimes they can be both at the same time. A book belongs in a library, on a bookshelf, in a bookshop, in your house. You can read a book while you walk, but you have to be careful not to bump into things. You can read in the bath, but you mustn't drop your book. oh, it's impossible to read in the shower. So a book is a book, and I would recommend that to anybody who either wants to read a book like that or has children that they'd like to read to. But there you go. A book by Jenny Bornholt. A book is a book. I thought very appropriate for the book show. Yeah. So that's Gecko Press. The other book of the week, totally different, The Madness of Helen. And it's a most interesting book. It's interesting from a number of points of view. Russell Meek, the author, has been promoting it himself. So it's self-published. A massive volume,
yes,
a very large volume, and it's a fantasy book, but it doesn't have sort of gorgons and dragons and all that sort of thing, so it's not in the style of Lord of the Rings. It's set in a mythical part of the world, it has a Scandinavian feel about it, though it doesn't mention Scandinavia, but a lot of the characters in it are have a Scandinavian feel. He does have a very descriptive way of writing. Just the opening paragraph. The last of the winter's snow had fallen on the mountain city of Brunn. Its gentle powder wrapped a soft blanket over rooftops and cobbled streets. The spring trades were still a month away, and the only signs of life were smoke trails wafting from grey chimney peaks high in the air. It was bitterly cold, the mountain winds sinking sharp teeth through the fur coats of 2 sentry guards aloft in their watchtower. So you can see it has a medieval feel with the sentries and the watchtower and all that sort of thing. So it's swords and bows and arrows and drunkenness and betrayal and seduction and all those good things.
Yes.
It's also the sort of hero's quest type of story, and the women in it are quite strong characters. For example, one of the chief protagonists, goes off on a quest, and he's trained by a woman that is called Master. It's a hefty volume,
yep,
and because the characters' names are unusual, you've got to keep concentrating as to who is who and what is what.
But that quest in the classic sense.
It is, very much so. And this is book 1 of the Carlada Stone series. Lots of words with consonants put together, so you've got to try and work it out. But there you go. And he's done a deal. This is the author, Russell Meek. He's done a deal with Whitcoulls and Paper Plus, and they're now stocking the book that he's published himself. And he's doing tours of New Zealand and promoting the book. Apparently he's sold 1,500 plus copies. So all power to him.
Yes.
And he's done a lot of travelling, and he's also a photographer and commercial advertising photographer. So he draws on all these experiences to create these fantasy characters. So here we are, The Madness of Helen. Book of the Week on the Book Show.
John, thank you so much. We'll see you again next week, and until then, good reading.